Hi everyone, Stephanie Nina Pitsirilos, and I'm going to read a story excerpt from my short story collection, Event Horizon, Stories of No Turning Back, published by Janus Point Press, my imprint. Stories written by myself, and illustrations, photography, original canvas work by an array of wonderful artists. So do check out in the description where you can find more information about all these wonderful illustrators and the book. So the cover you're seeing is by Karen S. Darboe. There's actually 3 covers to this book. This is our main cover. Beautiful Karen S. Darboe cover. And the story I'm going to read to you right now is Space Invaders. And the art is Aaron Guzman. And this is a story that I would call graphic prose, as there are multiple illustrations throughout this story. I thought she'd run out of lives, but 3 years after they pulled my mother's body out of a boarded up church, there was her voice on the other end of the phone. Her call came as I stood at the threshold of Mr. Navarro's building, a condemned 5-floor walk-up tenement in El Barrio, with the face of an old man crowning from a stone bush of acanthus leaves. For anyone else, her last hit was game over. Her legacy, her high score. Since I'm about befores, more so afters, and not one for the in-between, I told myself that it was the medical examiner who extracted the pill from the abandoned building, not the EMT. That name she had earned from me in my teens because the actual pill was something she wasn't allowed under Grandma's Catholic roof. And neither was the abortion she wanted, and I know that because the pill told me. How I see it, because I quickly hung up on her, is the pill unleashed the furies by conjuring a doppelganger as my patient. What I tell the rotation of nurses who ask who I am, Navarre's only visitor now at the Veterans Home at St. Albans, La Muchacha, who plays games on his phone, switches his TV channels without him erupting, who can identify the statue by his bed. Navarre was my first home visit, my first anything out of my apartment in 3 months. Urayoan had walked me there. Navarre was supposed to be easy money, but instead, a Puerto Rican Fred Sanford, minus the dutiful son, who refused his VA benefits and was glued to his old box TV, waited for me inside. He had a voice as loud as the Big Bang, and his first words to me were, "Lock the goddamn door!" Mine were for Viejo not to lose his dentures. There were jabs. These jabs are what Mom and I were all about. Mine, though, just came from my mouth. Viejo had created his own Cordillera Central in Guamahuaya with mountains of junk in his apartment, rent frozen in ice age digits. Walking through his door meant hopscotching over peppermint-scented garbage bags, spilling with old newspapers, at least 6 months or more of the dailies, from El Diario to the Wall Street Journal. Somewhere in those bags was my story, buried on page 38 of the June 27th edition of the New York Daily News. Nurse assaulted on East Side home visit by banker. 543, a skybox on Park Avenue, was his apartment number. I had 1 week left to let my lawyer know whether I was taking the banker's offer and settling the case. The pill probably pulled the news out of a bag, just like those rummaging through old recycling bins on the corner, squatting the fringes of the boroughs. Oblivious to the timestamp, yet somehow sniffing out the victim out as me. 3 months later, there I was in Operation Bootstrap, what Urayoan's cousin Anacaona called it when I agreed to become her father's nurse. She sounded like my grandmother, Our history is your history, Eva. Grandma would go on about Puerto Rico, this and that. On the only day of the week where I'd see her, Sunday, when she wasn't preaching about a savior I'd given up waiting for. If Juan had proposed that I go back to work, I'd accuse him, again, of being a boyfriend reaching for my wallet. Money is exactly the kind of miracle that would make my mother Lazarus. I was knee-deep in Navarre's storied, hefty mountains, just past our fuck you hellos, when another player weighed down the overloaded scales of my life. The same way Navarre's doctor is complaining about him to me now in a room that smells like Clorox. He just sits there. My own doctor called to ask me why I was passive and stalling. Navarre turned his head, returning my stare from his chair. I slid the phone back into my thigh pocket, feeling for the knife. Later, Juan would learn about the call from the doctor, but that morning I didn't tell him about the pill, how she didn't ask if I was okay or if I'd finally become a mother. Instead, she asked, in that same gonna smack my ass tone, the $1,000,000 question. So, are you gonna stay hit? Don't stay hit was the code of every Brandeis high school kid, so your ass didn't become the school punching bag. And second to this, you'd like yourself a lot more too. You're not gonna fight back? Is how the pill sometimes spells it out, confusing the duty of motherhood with training a street fighter, Chun-Li. But besides this lesson, all the woman left me was Elise. Gold, Juan informed me with so much thirst, motherfucker almost copped a Scottish accent because he sounded like Scrooge McDuck. I declined Elise, having long left her house with my Coños, Star Hunters comic collection, and fresh high school diploma. Meanwhile, the no heat studio I moved into was just 5 blocks away. But in New York City, that can be like crossing the Atlantic. Juan is a damn good swimmer. How we throw down is that I'm one of those Goldilocks bitches who wears a dress with the price tag tucked inside the waistband of her pantyhose, then returns it the next morning with some punk-ass excuse. Too clingy, doesn't flatter me, doesn't worship me. Juan's that in-between porridge that I sometimes settle for. People's history, though, is what really tells a story. And ours is that he's the childhood sweetheart from down the block who you uncross your legs to in sex ed taught by Mr. Magoo. He was player number 1, and I was player number 2. 2 street punks burning away the dinner time hours on space opera video games at the arcade. I was good at finding coins in sticky nooks and crannies. Juan was good at bumming them. Mothership hit us up for our last quarter, I tell him one day, his hands reaching down my jean pockets. Ain't looking for quarters, he smiled, and that's always been our game. The game Navarre and I played was cat and mouse too, though I couldn't say who was who. In that day I spent with him, I learned our difference was that he lived firm with a difficult decision bunkered in his armchair, while I oscillated over my own like a bobblehead. I wanted those kind of balls. Don't put your purse on the floor, he started hollering as I settled in. You want to lose money? Meanwhile, it was only grocery bags I had put down. When the pill Claxton alarmed this superstition shit at me, I drag all her bags down from the closet and decorate the floor. Red snakeskin clutches with gold chain straps, a crossbody turquoise as the waters around Culebra, with a rust barrel bag, a shell unbombed up Vieques. Standing in a sea of pleather, my 6-year-old ass in a culotte would stare at her and her superstition down. Besides being a smartass, I figured conjuring bad luck would have bartered away her needles. Gained me a smack, but not my mother back. So much for deal-making skills. In nursing school, they teach you that white act called professionalism. So at Navarre's, I swallow it by resting my bag prim and proper on a coffee table stacked with a mountain of papers while his TV blared with game shows players getting zumped. Palante pamphlets, a loan letter with a web address, bestegg.com/offer. Associated supermarket flyers. An open letter with red print on gaudy gold letterhead was on the tippy top of the pile. Second notice, September 1st, 2018. My eyes, $6 man, scanned the letters in bold type. Condemned, demolition. By law, you are required to vacate. Old man didn't care. The landlord wanted his building back. Anacona and Antillano tell me, I started, but Viejo wasn't having it. You see my children here? You see anything with those sunglasses on? My bangs flipped back as I pulled my shades to my head, sizing him up. Old man held onto his hair, but not its color, and his mustache made him look like a cuttlefish. Once upon a time, a meteor shower hit his face, leaving a lunar surface of pockmarks. Besides crabby as history of present illness, what we got? I pulled out his chart. Let's start with pressure, then pulled out my machine. Only way this'll work, doctora, Navarre tells me, and he might as well have had a toothpick hanging from his lip, is to have a code name. In Nam, they call me machatero. Sweet, roll your sweater up, please. Only if we have a deal. I agreed to think one up just so I could strap the arm cuff over his saggy, Popeye didn't eat no spinach biceps. He had plenty of fire, though. In the kitchen, I started putting his groceries on the counter when the radio was on low. On the freezer, behind a magnet of spaghetti, was a faded photo of two babies. One ebony, the other pale as fuck, and both looking aged 1. Which got me all Inspector Gadget, because Anacona never mentioned she and Antillano being twins. Navarre shuffled into the kitchen as 1010 Wind's radio switched from reports on bad crosstown traffic to the never-ending saga of hacking and the DNC. The radio said one thing, my ears heard another. You look green, Navarre remarked. Are you the doc now? My phone started beeping again. I know you don't like to answer calls, Eva, my lawyer wrote. Text me why to make the deal. I ignored the message, and Navarre started station surfing the radio. The button pushing just got him alien-sounding static. Stacking the third domino box into Navarre's cabinet, I stopped. Viejo, you're diabetic. How did I wind up buying all this sugar? Habits are hard to kick. Mom knew that, except her fix was brown sugar cooked on a bent spoon. You forgot the beans, Navarre tells me, leaving the kitchen. You can pick them up when you pay my rent. Rent? What world you living in? Already I'm your Jacksonville hauling your groceries across town. But Navarre had already retreated to the swaddle of his armchair. The man had me chasing him. I gotta do your vitals. The living room was engulfed by the sound of accelerating electronic beeps. On the TV, a woman was spinning at the showcase showdown wheel, hoping to land on the almighty dollar. Navarre had morphed into Dr. Teeth, flashing his crowns and caps in a grin. The beep slowed to a flat line. No home, Navarre tells me. No vitals to check. Deal or no deal?
Let's go further. Let's never stop.